Humza's stepping down. So, is it possible that it was my email to Humza and all the other MSPs that forced him to step down? Or did he catch sight of my last video and fall on his sword? Probably not, but I like to think that the combined effort of everyone who went and kicked up a fuss created enough doubt within the SNP that they had no other choice but to tap him on the shoulder. And rightly so. We should not have to suffer such levels of incompetence and racism from our politicians. I actually did get quite a few responses from MSPs, although mostly they were just trying to deflect from answering my questions, or a lot of them were just saying they can't give me an official response because I'm not one of their constituents. What a cop-out. I did end up with one fairly positive interaction with one SNP politician, John Mason, and I genuinely think this guy was being decent and he was giving me an honest response. However, some of his responses showed just how out of touch politicians are. He clarified to me that jokes about gay people are probably prohibited, and that Scotland needs to do more work to get more African and Chinese people into Parliament. I wish I was joking, but this is actually what he told me in his very honest email. I'm sitting here editing as I recover from a hernia operation, not gender affirming care as I posted earlier on Twitter today, and I'm about to take my George Floyd recommended pain relief. And I come across some articles on this politician, John Mason. He certainly is the best of the lot of them. He's the only one from all the parties that I can see who appears to have principles of his own. Whether or not you disagree with them, he will go against the official party line. And the SNP reprimanded him for this in 2022 because he defended anti-abortion protesters. Nicola Sturgeon was not happy with this, saying, "Your lack of sensitivity in the current context has been noted." And then this year he was labelled as someone who makes controversial comments because he suggested that it's acceptable to criticise Jews. Now, it should be okay to criticise anyone. Jews, Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Scots, Irish, English, French, especially the French, Aboriginal Australians. No one should get special treatment. So poor John here gets the piss taken out of me in this video, but he's actually the most decent guy they've got. Allow me to read my response to John, which I assure you is going to be to your amusement. Dear John, thanks for your response. I do appreciate you taking the time to give me a considered reply. All of the SNP MSPs to reply to me, other than you and one other, chose to deflect from my concerns or simply claim they did not know what I was talking about. Now, some of them, when they read my email, they just put on this act when they replied to me saying, we don't have any idea what your concerns are, just pretending they had no idea what the words in my email meant. Your response does give me some reassurance. However, from my research, it appears that this new act goes beyond bringing Scotland into line with England and leaves it wide open to interpretation, which cannot be a good thing. I give you two examples from those who can articulate this better. I gave John these two links. Basically, a lot of the politicians, especially the SNP ones, had a standard response saying that the new law in Scotland simply brings it into line with England, which is not true. There has already been a case of police either deliberately misusing the new law or misunderstanding it in the arrest of a woman in Troon. This arrest is also rumoured to have been the result of a bogus complaint, which is exactly the concern of many who are critical of the SNP's new law. Now, another standard response I got from John and other SNP politicians was saying that Humza was not being racist when he was saying white, and that he was just pointing out that non-whites just aren't getting into senior positions and that should change. They had some real political spin to their words. So I said, in response to your explanation of Humza's comments, there can be many factors as to why some groups aren't in certain positions in Scotland. Humza and other politicians were insinuating that it was all down to some ingrained racism that us Scots hold deep within us. This is what I think has upset a lot of people. Yesterday I posted another video online which shows that the majority of Scots are quite the opposite of this, and that we are extremely tolerant of others, perhaps to our own detriment, and I gave him a link to that video. If you watched the previous video that was linked to the first email, then you will have heard my point that nobody who grew up on the same council estate as me made it into Parliament. Yet I can't help but notice that the First Minister and the leader of the Scottish Labour Party are both boys of privilege who attended an exclusive and expensive private school in Glasgow. Perhaps we need more people from council estates in senior positions in Scotland rather than those who went to private school. Diversity is our strength. I can recall my time working in the Philippines, that was 2014-2015. I was the only white person in attendance at every meeting I attended while living in that country. I didn't feel the need to have that change with some sort of quota, and neither did I spit the word Pinoy, 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 Pinoy over the lack of white representation in the same way that Humza and an ass spat out the word white, 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 white. Now, before I read you my next paragraph, let me read you one of John's lines to me. When it comes to the Scottish Parliament, we have a number of MSPs with a South Asian background, although that has taken some time to achieve. However, there is no one as yet with an African or a Chinese background, and we need to work on that. And to that, I responded to John, if Scotland is looking to fast-track those with Chinese backgrounds into senior government positions, then I guess that means China should be pressured into getting some Scots into the upper echelon of the CCP. Or perhaps we should be critical of the Republic of Sudan and the lack of white or female or trans representation in their parliament. Jokes aside, John, us Scots are addicted to self-loathing in a way that I have not seen in other countries. I had to endure the original sin guilt trip from going to Catholic school. I will not embrace the new white man bad form of original sin, as I have done nothing wrong and deserve the same respect as a pansexual trans woman of colour. I'm well aware that the Scottish Government is taking steps to hire and promote employees based on diversity scores rather than on merit. I encountered this myself in 2018 when I returned to Scotland for 4 months with the intention of staying. I applied for many jobs, some which were clearly below my level of expertise, as I was keen to just get into the workforce regardless of the salary and level of seniority. I only started to get offers of interviews after I decided to tick the bisexual option rather than the straight option. The interviews I did attend left me in shock at how the Scottish Public Service appears to be even more inept than the Australian government departments I'd worked in. So much so that after a final interview with one organisation, I immediately accepted one of the offers I was getting from Australia to return there. If I went back to Scotland now as a straight white male in his 40s, I think I'd be lucky to get a job flipping burgers. Funnily enough, I think a burger flipper provides more value to society than your standard government paper shuffler, and at a fraction of the cost. Debate and criticism is certainly allowed, and I would say that is what they have been doing. This was John saying that Humza and an ass were not stirring up hatred with their white comments, and it was all just part of a healthy debate. And again, my response to him was, the problem with the above statement is that there was no debate in Parliament that day, even though it was labelled as one. I would agree that racist incidents are unacceptable, but I reject this blanket suggestion that non-whites can't get ahead in Scotland and that it has something to do with deep-rooted racism. Not one MSP called out Humza and an ass on this, so you can't call it a debate. One of your SNP colleagues told me that I should have watched the full debate before I formed an opinion on Humza's comments. Believe me, I have watched that full 2 hours several times, as I find it hilarious. Certainly funnier than the state-funded comedy that's put out by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. The debate appeared to me to be nothing other than a Maoist China-style struggle session. Humza and an ass expressed their disgust that Scotland happens to be predominantly white, which they framed as being due to racism, and then each politician took it in turns to compete against each other to see who could flagellate themselves the hardest. It can be summed up as 2 hours of the MSPs making obvious statements like, racism is bad, and then pitching their case as to why they themselves shouldn't be considered as a bad racist person. To my knowledge, none of the white MSPs who spoke that day have yet given up their prestigious position and substantial salary to a non-white person. I call this performative caring. Another point John made in his email to me was that sharing opinions and making jokes is generally okay. And he went on to say that, you specifically mentioned making jokes about gay people. I would just caution about that. So, okay, jokes are okay, that's a relief. Still allowed to tell jokes for the time being. But, that's it, lads. Jokes about the gays are now off the table. It's official, no more gay jokes.
You were saying there about me being the top of the parliament, right, saying I'm gay. Right, I'm not gay. In fact, I can honestly say I've never come over a little queer.
You urged me to be cautious about making jokes about gay people. All around the world, people make fun of Scottish people for being Scottish. Could I possibly work this angle to gain victim status and preferential treatment in my next job interview? Anyway, I'm afraid it might be too late for avoiding gay jokes given some of the Twitter and YouTube content I've published in the past. Let's see if I get arrested for that when I land at Edinburgh Airport. I've got loads of gay mates. I can even utter the "my best friend is gay" line. I'll use that in my defence in court. Thanks again. I am sincere in my appreciation of you responding to me in a more genuine way than most of your SNP colleagues did. I hope some common sense can prevail in all of this, and it did, because Humza's now stepped down. Work as if you live in the early days of a better nation. There's a reason I put that quote in at the end. I'll explain it another day. Cheers, and I've put my real name. I'm not even going to hide my real name because it's already out there. I feel a wee bit bad that I'm pointing out John here. He was decent enough to take the time to correspond with me back and forward, and fair play to the guy. He actually gave me another response to this email on the morning of me recording this. He started off by telling me, he's not going to respond to all my points because my email was a bit long. Fair point, John. That's true, because I was mostly writing it to entertain myself, not thinking he would give me another reply. So again, well played, John. I actually think he's probably a decent bloke. He did distort a few of my points, but I think he is mostly genuine, and perhaps if this was the engagement I got from politicians all throughout my life, then I might not be such an argumentative, aggressive asshole right now. I did get responses from other MSPs, but most of them tried to deflect from answering my questions. I might do a short video next week if I can be bothered to summarise some of that, because I guess there was a couple of funny things in their emails as well. Until then, keep celebrating that we got rid of Humza, but be on your guard for whatever clown will be chosen to replace him.